hope everyone's been quite so excited by all of the presentations and mind-blowing talks that we've had so far. It gives us a good chance to reflect on everything that they've been telling us about, but also what are the fundamentals that we need to be in control of in order to make some of those cool demonstrations actually possible. This panel discussion is basically supposed to be thought-provoking, but it should be, you know, for some people who haven't given this much thought, it definitely should be concerning. Progress. 6 months ago, I gave a talk at the Shape to Fabrication conference, and when I put this slide up, this prompted a great deal of feedback. It was a flurry of discussion, highlighting the myriad of perspectives on data use and digital adaptation. 20 years ago, the first time the phrase was used, if you are old enough like myself to have heard it, that data is the new oil. Coincidentally, 20 years ago was when Facebook was founded, and they seem to be of the actual people who've managed to make good on data being that new oil. In the AEC industry, have we fully realized the potential of data as a strategic resource? Are we innovating our data practices beyond the traditional file-centric approach? Is a file-centric approach particularly relevant? So today, as we deep dive into these questions, we're going to explore how an integrated data-centric strategy can drive innovation, collaboration, and sustainability in the industry. So joining me today are distinguished experts and Speckle friends and partners who each bring unique perspective and experience in the data strategy world. I think one of our panelists is not arrived, so let's go straight to the thing. So Giovanni is currently not with us, but I'd like to introduce Sonia Haddad, who's the Chief Information Officer of DAR. Hello, Sonia.
Hi.
I bring on stage Alex Coles, who's the Head of Data Insights and Knowledge Management at Builders, Sisk, John Sisk and Sons.
Hi, everybody.
And hi there. John Shiangoli is a data analytics architect at Jacobs.
Welcome, everybody.
And needing no introduction at all is Dimitrie Stefanescu, the co-founder of Speckle.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, y'all. Okay, I will bring up a general, well, I would ask a general question on to each of you in terms of a data strategy point of view. When you are thinking about a data strategy, are you focused on files or are you focused on what data can do for you? So specifically, I would like to say on that data is the new oil point of view, which is no longer a new phrase. Data is the asset and data is a tool. Sonia, do you have any particular views or interests in leveraging data at a strategic level? DAR is obviously a very multinational and multidisciplinary. You've got vast quantities of data in the past that has been definitely file-centric. You are now responsible for the strategy moving forward. How do you see data as enabling as an asset or as a resource?
Thank you, Jonathan. Basically, you coined this term data is the new oil 20 years ago. I'm saying my statement would be data is the new oxygen, and we can't last a few seconds without it. So going back to the word files, yes, definitely we need to get rid of the file and we need to become data enabled. I came across questions from different stakeholders from DAR. We've always had data all the way to the books that was data, but we talk about data as a consumable asset, not just data as data stored somewhere. So the data as a tool, it helps insights, it helps analytics, it provides competitive advantage, which we will talk about later on today. But data as an asset, it's a foundational matter. If we look at the buzzwords of the industry, we have the framework, the data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. So if we look at data as the foundational layer of wisdom, that's very important for our company to move forward. And then there is the attributes of the data or dimensions. How much data do we have? You just mentioned we have history and we have active data, and each has its own so volume. How do you acquire data? How do we cleanse it? How do you consume it? So data as an asset, there's a lot around it in terms of how we govern it, how we secure it. But again, it is an asset that will last us for a long time from now. Thank you.
So I just, John, you are responsible for building an architecture and basically a platform for your colleagues of engineers at Jacobs. How much are you sort of motivated to providing as many tools to their kind of their toolkit as possible that makes their jobs easier?
That's a good question, and I want to go back to Sonia's answer with regards to a tool and an asset. An asset, I see an asset as the provider providing the data, and the tool is the end user taking that data and then using it to achieve an outcome. So in terms of I could give you some examples. You know, if we take, say, for example, a water utility may have assets out there, and they will provide that data to their suppliers to understand the how good those assets are performing. So you've got data as an asset that is the provider. The suppliers are using it as a tool to be able to understand. You know, these are the sort of things that you need to look at and look at it from two perspectives. Another example is design as a service. You know, if you think about what Speckle could become in the future, if you've been integrating designs from a number of use cases, in the future, you could potentially provide a design as a service. So in other words, you've come along with your concept. So the asset is provided by the design as a service. The tool is being used by a customer who wants to have a design outcome from that as well. So these are the sort of things that are possibilities of what you could do with Speckle and what is out there being done at the moment.
It's interesting you touch on the design as a service. Effectively, you're leveraging the data that you have at your fingertips and the tools that you have to access the data. As we talk about, there's a lot of noise.
There's
So
noise
if you
coming
have
from somewhere.
Yeah. If you have a view on that data repository, if you build an infrastructure for yourself, that data repository end up being a competitive edge in the marketplace. So when you're looking to compete against, you know, other like-minded and intelligent organizations, would you see that this plays into that data strategy?
I mean, data strategy is, you know, a widely used term. So your data strategy needs to be aligned to your overall business goals, whatever that might be, whether you're empowering your user or you want to sell your particular service. But you mustn't lose sight of that, generally speaking. Some of the things that you need to do is to be able to achieve all of that. You know, from your, for example, to the point of where you ask the question of the system, you know, the business question, or so to speak, that business question could be the kind of example we've already kind of discussed, to the discovery of the data and all of that. And it's working backwards as well and building a platform that allows you to be able to deliver those perspectives as well. Whether it's discovery, whether it's subsequent actions from that, being able to understand, okay, you've taken those actions, how did you get to those actions, and where'd you get those answers from, all the data lineage, etc. So a data strategy from a generic point of view is looking at how you want to surface it and working backwards in terms of from a compliance point of view and everything else associated with it as well.
So Alex, in your role at Sisk, certainly in your job title, it seems to suggest a particular a view about how data might be used. Just on that competitive advantage, Aaron was giving a lot of Aaron Atkinson earlier in a talk. He was giving a lot of good feelings about the support that he gets from Sisk as an organization, specifically around managing of information and having a lot of data tools at his disposal, and also to innovating on that. How much of that is around a competitive advantage, and how much of it is just about doing things better?
So I think going back to the everybody's favorite quote around data and the new oil, in my mind, for a contractor, I've always thought of that oil as being kind of the oil in the machine to keep things moving. I think on a construction project, it's very difficult in the real world on a construction site to know exactly what's going on all the time. And that's where things like what Aaron's developed for us using Speckle is great, just to kind of get a handle on what we're building, how we're building it. And I think in terms of the competitive edge around that, having that assurance around our decision making of knowing exactly what's going on, what the cause and effect is, results in more assured delivery for clients, which can only be a competitive advantage, I'd say. So in terms of it's great to hear that Aaron feels well supported. My role, the world's longest job title, is very much around kind of being that link between our operational project teams, who kind of desperately need the information now by hook or by crook, and the kind of the systems architects in our central IT team, who are building the kind of robust way so that we're not always kind of flying by the seat of our pants, and that information is there, when we need it, as we need it. And my background, for everybody in the call, I'm a civil engineer by background. I've gone rather off piste from how I set out, which is kind of exciting, shows what an exciting world this is. And I'd see myself as being that kind of ambassador between our people with hard hats and muddy boots and our people designing our IT systems. And often they don't talk to each other as much as they should, but it's all about finding that common ground. And in terms of the competitive edge, I think all of those experts in their fields coming together has got to be good for a company's competitive edge.
Is that how you see things at DAR, Sonia, as well? When you have so many multidisciplinary teams working with themselves and also collaborating outside with such a kind of holistic, broad picture, is it more than just competitive advantage? Is it about just doing things better?
Hearing our colleagues, when I look at data strategy in DAR, it is not just doing things better. It is definitely using data will make things better, but the competitive advantage is also looking at selling new services, using data, not only the private data, but also the public data, to make sure that we are able to create this hybrid platform that will allow our engineers, our architects, the multidisciplinary teams have better insights, better client understanding, better more informed about demographics, about what's happening out there. This is so basically the competitive advantage and doing things better go hand in hand by allowing DAR teams to become more data literate, understand how to use this data, and this is part of our governance. So when we look at data governance and John mentioned it previously. Looking at data governance, we need to look at people's enablement. We need to look at the tech stack. What's the technology? Speckle to me is an extremely important part of the ecosystem, but it is not the whole thing. There is a lot of a lot of components that will have to go in tandem with Speckle. Speckle is definitely what we call it internally in that as our model data hub. But there's of course a huge amount. Business operations need data, designs need data. So again, data is so critical now that takes us not only in the competitive understanding our clients, understanding how to address clients, what are our clients' needs, but also in doing things better, making things faster, being more productive through parametric design, through automation. So basically, we look at data now as within the solar system as the sun, and we have to go around it, making things. There is a very intricate um, balance between this data core and all the operational parts of Dar al-Handasa going around this data core, basically. So we look at it as a very focused approach. That's how we see it.
So in everything that's been described so far is definitely capturing an organization's knowledge and the organization's expertise. So one of the things that you might make use of a back catalogue of knowledge and expertise would be to both, let's say, mentor the design teams and mentor the engineering teams as they go, progress through their professional career, but also generally, in terms of the added services that John mentioned, would be to enable innovation in a practice. Giovanni, at HENN, how does this play into what your focus in terms of managing of information?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for having me. Well, I think I might come to this from a slightly different angle, because first of all, when I hear data as the new oil, as the head of sustainability, I hope this is PV powered data. But what we do, and we work very much in an architectural firm, but focusing on this topic of sustainability, really, then it's at the intersection of all the different disciplines that come into making an architectural project. And what we're trying to do more and more is to collect and structure our data so that for every project that we have running, we have an up-to-date and a live sort of scorecard that can tell us how that is performing. No? And sustainability is only one of the dimensions. Of course, there are cost and budget and all the other ones that play into that role. And what I think Speckle really enables us to do in many ways is to have, as you were saying, it's sort of lubricant that enables data to flow more smoothly between the applications. And it enables also then to disseminate that data so that you can, through automation, have routines that don't need necessarily expert users, that can be run more seamlessly. And then what was a few years back the domain of an expert and would have required extra budget, extra time, delays and whatnot, and would have been a moment of breaking the design flow, now can be much more smoothly integrated. And that connects to what you were talking about, learning cycles also for younger colleagues, because then they can tap into this sort of encoded knowledge that is embedded into these automations, and they get this sort of feedback. If I do this, that's the consequence. And oftentimes those consequences are not immediately visible on the design or on the appearance, but they have impact on timeline, on cost, on sustainability, on all those other important and invisible dimensions.
Alex, would you like to touch on innovation as an aspect of this that we're just talking about?
Yeah, I'll touch on innovation, and the other part of it is knowledge for me, and that's kind of my role is this split of knowledge and innovation, and I think that's something that we've really understood in Sisk with the appointment of me as having these kind of joint hats, is the fact that knowledge and data are absolutely two sides of the same coin. That if we're collecting all this knowledge and coming up for these all of this data and coming up with these fabled knowledge and wisdom and insights, where do they go? What do we do with them? How do we share them? And that's where kind of the knowledge comes in. And the example that you will have heard from Aaron on one of our projects in the UK, he's gone off and done some incredible work, but he's done it in a pocket. So my challenge is how you take that innovation, which is all around data and the application of data to a construction project, and kind of turbocharge it so that it becomes our business as usual. And I think the flip side of that is, we're trying to get the knowledge from the data, but more and more there's an understanding that how we manage our knowledge, and I know that this isn't a call around knowledge management, but the knowledge management tools of the future are data processing tools. They are the AIs and machine learnings and the chat GPTs and all these kind of things. So if you understand data, you can manage your knowledge a lot better. So they are so interlinked. And I think hopefully, our data strategy is kind of built around that understanding of, what do we do with all this data? And that's kind of spurs the innovation, that you can kind of understand, right, well, we've got all this data, but so what?
Yeah, so what? So when you're building the enormous haystack and then you're seeking the needle within it, what tools do we bring to bear to kind of surface those needles is not necessarily the great thing, but in terms of the whatever the analogy is, the gems in the soup. With a large amount of data, let's say if we are not managing that, we don't have a strategy for managing that, how much are we exposing ourselves to risk in whatever form that takes? John, I think you're definitely exposed to this as a concept of not only from a kind of security point of view, but just generally, what systems do we need to put into place to make sure that we are resilient to risks around data? And also now we're talking about fundamental knowledge.
There's no doubt about that. One of the things you need to implement on your platform is a governance strategy that takes into account security. And security has two forms here. Security is from a physical perspective and security from an identity perspective. And that's all the way down to your data itself. So when I'm talking about that, say, for example, if I'm talking about a cloud perspective, you've got an identity perimeter or a physical perimeter. You're in the Azure cloud and most of the other potential clouds, you're going to be linked to AAD. So you need to have an implementation where you can control that and use appropriate tools to govern and control that particular access control. And that could be access control externally, where you've federated your platform for external use, or internally as well.
So in addition to the kind of technological resilience to risk, we also have risks around sustainability of the economy, sustainability around the political situation, generally speaking, in terms of talking about competitive advantage. Are we being left behind by our competitors? Are we seeking to provide the best service to our clients? And Sonia, you mentioned on this. Is a view of risk and resilience a positive thing to keep in mind on managing a data strategy? Sonia, I value your input on that.
Definitely, data, as we mentioned, it's an asset that needs to be protected, and it's a tool that needs to be used with proper information. Use it correctly. So it's like a knife. You can use a knife for God forbids not so good things, and you can use a knife for very, very improved things. So data, in terms of risk and first and foremost, the insecurity, people are the most vulnerable. So we need to teach our people how to use data, how to govern data, how to protect data, and how to ensure that data is properly administered, shared. So that's a first. Now, definitely, is it a positive thing to take care of the risk and resilience of data? Of course, it is. We cannot survive the future without really protecting the data platform, data assets in a way that will ensure survivability of this data for the future. This is my point of view, basically, about how data risk and the people, to me, is the most important part of making sure that the data risks are well mitigated.
I think another thing with resilience is about choosing an appropriate platform to run your data. So as long as you're using a distributed platform and you've got a distributed implementation, there's always a fallback. So choosing an appropriate platform from a resilience perspective, and also the human perspective that Sonia has been mentioning is a key aspect of that.
So from the sustainability side that you touched on, because of a big focus of yours, Giovanni, generally speaking, not only on sustainability, but generally around corporate responsibility, or whether you have a responsibility to your client's data, you have a responsibility to your employees' data, and generally speaking, we have broader ethical responsibilities. How do you see data or data strategy playing into that as a useful part of your thought process around corporate social responsibility?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like we are seeing this especially in sustainability now, that there is more and more a push towards, especially here in Europe, there is more and more a push towards data transparency and going beyond a lot of greenwashing. And I think every one of us had their moment going through various magazines, architectural reviews, and seeing green project, sustainable project, and have their moment like a bit of between doubt and cringe, I guess. And I think that's kind of what one of the big things that we're seeing that really needs to change, that we're held in a lot more accountable for our data, that for how we communicate our projects, and we need to have much more transparency. And our clients now here in Europe, there is, I think it's really a big shift that we're seeing in the next year with all the non-financial disclosures regarding on the topic of sustainability that also center on data, and all the new ways really that we see the topic of sustainability to be totally interwoven with the topic of data, from understanding the embodied carbon of our projects to understanding the potential for reuse, adaptive reuse of existing and new projects. For all of this, we need to have data, and we need to also have data that can survive the test of time, that is not just a sort of short consumable, but we need to create data infrastructure that can have the lifespan of the building, and that can be open and accessed and inspected throughout the lifespan of the building. So we're talking about, we really need to create infrastructure that can survive over 50, 100 years. And that I think it's a real challenge that we're seeing now, because we are really seeing this shift where we do not deliver just a built asset, but we deliver next to it also its digital version. And that digital version needs to stay usable, needs to stay up to date throughout the life cycle of the building. And more importantly, when we talk about sustainability, those digital assets will need to be more and more inspectable, because as with all these sustainability disclosure, non-financial disclosures. Our clients are asking those data from us. We will be soon also subject to disclosing those data, and I think that's going to really be a good moment. Is going to bring a few headaches on how to viably implement all of this, but this is certainly going to be a good moment where transparency comes into the world of architecture and construction. And the other point is really on forgot the other point. I had another one.
I think there's a point around that about what you're able to say and what you're able to communicate as an organization, as an individual. It brings authenticity and legitimacy, because if you have a strong understanding of everything that you have as an asset, then what you're able to communicate is therefore, sincere, authentic. I remember one of the early conversations I had with you, Dimitrie, around what Speckle was around it being a communication platform, not necessarily about chatting hin and her, back and forth. Generally speaking, Speckle is a medium for communication, and we're talking now about data. It's about information. How do you see that filling into that role as it talks to responsibility and authenticity, particularly in light of now we are going to be receiving a lot of information that is generated? I'm going to take a few more people's bingo cards and say machine learning AI is going to be generating a lot of data, and maybe that is authentic and maybe it is let's say hallucinatory.
Okay, thanks for the question, Jonathan. It's indeed it's been reflected throughout the conversation today. So why I refer to Speckle as a communication platform rather than just a data platform in my PhD, for example, right? Because there's data without it being consumed productively by a recipient, be that a machine, a large language model, if you want to play the AI drinking game, or other human beings, engineers or architects, is going to waste. So from that point of view, we're not producing oxygen, we're producing carbon. So Speckle's ambition as a platform is, as Madame Sonia said, to produce oxygen, or to enable everybody here present to produce data as oxygen, something that is worthwhile being consumed and used and valued. That's where the whole communication angle comes from. I can quote a bunch of extra references, including Grice from 1974 and so on, but I will stop there.
Jonathan, if you allow me, I know Dimitri mentioned that Speckle is a communication, but what I found extremely valuable in Speckle is the interoperability. It's an integration platform, and as a very core component of any data strategy would be the integration between systems, because we will not have a single platform. We will always have federations. We will always have multiple systems that they need to communicate together. So what I found extremely powerful in Speckle are the connectors, and how we're able to use Speckle as the interoperability part, whereby we're able also to store data. We're able to manage change management, manage change within the platform. But the interoperability feature of Speckle, call it a communication or call it whatever, is really, and this is in any data strategy, I find this as the crux of the matter, that the data becomes consumable, available, accessible to different platforms, be it machine learning, be it users, be it analytics platform, whatever it is. The integration is and the interoperability are key to the data strategy, ideally.
That allows all the additional layers on top, the automation and everything else. That's a key part, no doubt about it.
So we're talking, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you, Sonia, and John too. So as I round up and speak to each of you now at the end, can you think of any better solution for empowering your organizations, empowering your staff, empowering your internal communication than having a strong data strategy at all? I think I've overused data strategy as a term. It is the title of the talk. Alex, how would you talk about empowering the organization?
I would say that there is an element. It's funny. Construction is absolutely full of jargon. Data is absolutely full of jargon, and they are both very difficult for kind of new starters to get their heads around. But fundamentally, the average construction professional, if they're an engineer, a QS, whatever they might be in terms of contractors, they're going to be logical, mathematically literate, and they're going to fundamentally be able to pick some of this stuff up if you strip away some of the jargon out. So that's what we've kind of tried to do, is to try and put it in the hands of clever people like Aaron, who you've heard earlier, as something practical and useful that they can use, that we can work with, and then I can be that kind of translator between IT and people in hard hats. So I would say that that would be the big thing for us, is, you know, strip it back, empower the people who are at the coalface in terms of actually using the data. And then in terms of a central team that we would have, is listen to the grassroots, and when they come up with ideas, be ready to, you know, productionize them and, you know, lift the company as a whole.
Giovanni?
Yeah, I think that to me, I'll go back to that topic of communication. I mean, like Dimitrie started his PhD. There was also a collaboration with HENN back then. It was called Alternate Means to Communicate Measure. And the question is really about how do you communicate? Because in the end, all of this data, if it stays can be stored and can be processed, but ultimately it always requires human input to provide agency. And I think in the end, when we're talking about, especially when we're talking about the EAC, which is about the world that surrounds us, the brick and mortar that make our everyday life, we really need those communication that go from the very early design conversation to the muddy boots on the ground that Alex was referring to, that really make this available. So I think that, to me, in the end, and this communication, of course, nowadays it's expanding. It's not only between disciplines, is not only between companies, is, you see it's across projects, is between people and machines, because you can start interrogate your data and have a chat with your BIM model and whatnot. So I think, but the main thing is about really this topic of communication, and how do we keep this data alive and bring them from chip to our brains so that it enables action in the real world.
And John, any last reflections on the conversation?
I think the biggest challenge is adoption. We've discussed the file scenario. It's been around for such a long time in the architectural, engineering, and construction industry. How do you take an industry that's been embedded with the file culture and using a more digital culture, where they're just looking at an object to deliver on a construction site rather than a paper-based construction? And, you know, so that is the biggest challenge, and especially in major projects.
So Dimitrie, I would say that that's the challenge put to us. How do we see Speckle meeting that challenge, and how do we see ourselves evolving to bring everyone along on a kind of a newer way of working?
From my point of view, I think people do not care what tool they use as long as they can get the job done. So I think if we're going to be able to offer a better experience than PDFs, and I think we're well on our way to do that, there's going to be absolutely no problem.
Thank you very much.
Easier said than done, I think.
Indeed, agreed. But I want to end on an optimistic note.
Yeah, okay, keep going.
Exactly.
So we have a little bit of time. I would ask Matteo Sender, have we found any good questions from the audience? I guess not.
No, none at all.
There's been lots of comments, no direct questions. I think
Yes.
Jonathan asked a lot of great questions already, so took away the the questions from the comments. Yeah, there's none. Sorry.
Okay. I think,
I just want to leave on a note based on PDF files versus data. The other day we were traveling, we're driving, and we remember the good old days where we used to have maps and we look at maps in order to know direction. Now we just have Google Maps. So that's the transformation. So basically, I think Speckle will eventually produce and provide the platform that will allow an AEC firm from rather using files into really using digital tools to deliver the project, whether in the design world or in the construction world. But we need to stay directing ourselves in that path, basically.
that's an excellent point.
Mm.
I think just to remember the being attacked for my still using files. We weren't suggesting files go away. It's just one of the many things that we're using. But some people had a visceral connection somehow to PDFs. So I would like to round up and say thank you very much all for joining us today in this panel, both on the panel itself and also in the all day, the great comments and feedback that we've been receiving on all of the great presentations that we've had right from the get-go. I would ask that everyone, if they can, join in tomorrow. We can be going more deep dive into the announcement we half had this morning on Speckle Automate. This is extremely exciting and has been involving for a lot of the team. Yeah, do join in. It's a very developer-y focused day, so really get your nerd goggles on and tune in. So once again, thank you very much, Giovanni, John, Sonia, and Alex. Thanks for joining us.